Shalom and greetings, my friends, family, and fellow believers, and welcome back to Bible and a Bicycle. My name is Will, and I'm an aspired follower of Yeshua HaMashiach. You might know him as Jesus Christ. And for the sake of brevity, and at the behest of Jack, we're just going to get straight to the fan edit.
I don't want to be that kind of person, and I know it. My virtuous, good self knows that that's not... What is this thing inside of me that makes me do this? We use this kind of language, right? And so this is not like just, silly devil under every bush. This is the Bible's way of getting at evil, our experience of evil. It's as if there is this influence exploiting my weaknesses. So there might be patterns of behavior in our lives, or patterns of relating, and just everywhere we go, we leave a trail of broken relationships or something. Do you actually have a hope that the present state of your life doesn't get to determine the meaning of your life? The present state of your character, the addiction that you have right now, the broken state of the relationships that you have right now. God has the power to reverse those death moments in your life into something new. He's making all things new. This is it's the power to heal and transform sinful human beings. And for some of you, you might think, okay, I could see how maybe God could do that in my life. And there are others of you who are like, nice pipe dream. So you don't know my story, You don't know like the patterns that I'm in. I've been in this downward spiral for 15 years now. You really think Jesus can get me out of this? And I can't answer that question for you. All I can say is I'll pray for you in hope that the privilege of being among the people that God calls his own precious inheritance, and the hope that we have is that he can actually reverse the power of sin and death in our lives. A big part of what a Christian worldview is trying to help open our eyes to see is that the physical world as it presents itself to us is not the whole story. And as a child of 21st century American culture that tells us, right, that what you hear, see, taste, touch, and smell, that's all there is to reality. This is a really hard pill to swallow. The powers have an immense authority in human history and have immense influence in human history. What are these powers? And what does it even mean to wake up to the role that they have and the influence that they have? This is his description of humanity that's living in the age of sin and death. He says, as for you all, you were dead in your transgressions and sins. The idea of zombies living dead is not a new fad. It's actually quite an old idea. Right? So it's people who are alive physically, even spiritually and emotionally, but they're deadened and dead because of the perpetual selfish choices that we keep making and getting caught in that deaden us to an awareness of other people and of God. And so he says, we were all among the living dead, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. It's an idea that's all throughout the scriptures. It's that human beings, we're not actually that bright, and most of the decisions that we make aren't actually very reasoned choices. We're just pretty selfish, and most of the decisions that we make are based on our desires, right? And there you go. So that's the story of most of our lives. And so that's true. There exists a whole other realm of beings, created beings, who have real influence in human behavior and in human history, but that are not visible to us. And some of you are like, and that just got way too weird for me. But I do at least want to encourage you that it's actually not that weird. 100 years ago, if you were to try and explain Einstein's theory of relativity and like where things are going now in physics and string theory and the idea of multiple dimensions outside the four that we live in, right? Space, height, depth, width. and time. The idea that there are multiple dimensions that exist and that are real, but that are not perceptible at all to us four-dimensional beings. That's commonplace in modern physics now. Do you know this? I hope you know this, right? The idea that there are things that are real that absolutely can hardly be perceived by us at all, or likely will never be perceived by us. But by the math, they're real. That's a commonplace. This is not very strange, the idea of other dimensions that overlap and intersect with the four that we inhabit. And so the idea that there is a reality, even beings who exist in such dimensions and can actually influence the four that we live in, truth is stranger than fiction. And if you would have tried to explain Einstein's theory of relativity to someone living 100 years ago, they would have thought you were absolutely nuts. So here's what the Bible is asking us to entertain. And I would just put it before you and to say, how do you go about explaining certain things in our world? So even think personally. And the Bible's view of spiritual realities, of which Jesus is the victorious king over, that's where the story ends. The Bible's view of the spiritual realities is such that it's a way of thinking about our own personal lives, but also our corporate lives as a society. There is a non-physical being who's apparently influencing individual humans to exploit our sinfulness and selfishness and make a horrible mess, to make a horrible mess even worse. And so this is right back to what all the imagery in the story of the Garden of Eden is about, this presence of this mysterious, strange, evil being who's trying to exploit human selfishness to make a horrible mess. And you might say, that's really strange, talking snakes and so on. But so think about it this way. Think about your own personal experience. So let's say you have a relational conflict with somebody, or just someone in your life, and they just kind of push your buttons. And you know that it's wrong to just lash out and bite their head off, you know what I mean? Or just snap at them, and you know it's wrong, you know it's the wrong thing to do, and you know you shouldn't do it. It's totally not the right thing to do. But you get into the moment, right? And they're saying that thing again, and they're bringing up that thing from 2 years ago, and you're right here, and you're like, no, I don't want to do it, I don't know, blah, and you do it, whatever, and you totally level, you just cut them right down, with a cutting comment, or whatever it is, and then 10 minutes later, what are you doing? You're regretting the fact that you did that, because you know it was wrong. You knew it was wrong leading right up to it. You gave in to it, and then every moment leading after it, you're just like, shouldn't have, dang it, why did I do that again? So this is the human experience of evil, and I think it's actually really true to our experience. There's a sense in which, who made that decision to just deliver that cutting comment in the moment? You did. But there's another sense in which that impulse feels alien to me. It's me, but it's not me. That's not the me that I want to be. I don't want to be that kind of person, and I know it. My virtuous, good self knows that that's not. What is this thing inside of me that makes me do this? We use this kind of language, right? And so this is not just, silly devil under every bush. This is the Bible's way of getting at evil, our experience of evil. It's as if there is this influence exploiting my weaknesses, exploiting my frailties. And these thoughts come out of nowhere to say and do different things. And it may or may not be influence from evil spiritual beings or something like that. Most of us, we might be familiar with what I just talked about. And we might be familiar with the silly version of it, which is of the half human, half goat creatures, with the tail and the pitchfork, and these are the evil spiritual beings. So first of all, just get that silliness out of your head, right? So that's European Christians who imported Greek mythology into Christianity, so just get that out of your head. So this is what the Bible's saying, something different. So the Bible would ask us to entertain a reality or a dimension where these beings have influence over us as individuals. The Bible would also ask us to entertain the existence of beings that have influence over whole cultures, whole societies, exploiting the collective brokenness of dozens, hundreds, thousands of human beings to make a huge complex mess. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For talking collectively as a community of Jesus, listen, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. This is not about demon under every bush. This is about there are powers at work to influence and exploit the collective brokenness of humanity that are working to destroy human beings. Think of something that happened 50 years ago in American culture, right? It's been called the sexual revolution, right? Or the sexual liberation movement, right? So here's a movement that takes place in American culture, right? About the free love, that sex and love doesn't need to be contained within, the institution and by the man and marriage and this kind of thing. So there's free love, man, whatever. You got the impulse, go for it, And so here we are, 50 years later, the children and grandchildren of that great liberation. And how's that working out for our culture? You know what I'm saying? So here we are in the generations and grandchildren generations, post-generations, and like the majority of us are growing up without a mom or a dad or without both or maybe just one or neither. It's worked ruin in our culture, absolute ruin. When the Center for Disease Control came into existence in 1946, there were 2 known sexually transmitted diseases. There are now 27. So apparently, the sexual liberation has even invented new ways of humans destroying our own bodies, and we like it, we love it. We all know in our minds that yes, 27 sexually transmitted diseases, but I actually think it's a good idea to sleep with as many people as I can, right, as I want to. And you're like, what is are we missing something here? What is going on here? Who's responsible for the sexual revolution? So, how many people organized Woodstock? Maybe a dozen or so. I don't know. It's like the Grateful Dead. Are they responsible? It's Hollywood. Hollywood's the problem. Are they responsible? Or like the Beatles, the White Album. That's definitely, What are you, what? Who's responsible for this? Nobody and everybody. The powers, dude. It's the power. It's how else do you explain a whole culture of humans acting so irrationally for something that's bringing such ruin into our lives, and we just love it? We think it's great, and we just keep doing it. How do you explain that? There are forces at work exploiting the collective ignorance and impulses of humanity to ruin ourselves, and we think it's a good idea. There are powers at work exploiting collective human brokenness to wreak havoc in our world. This has come to be really an important and compelling part of Christianity to me. A way of explaining the way evil works on us. It's me, but it's not me. And how is it that myself and a whole culture of people can call something that's so clearly ruining us and we can call it good? How do you explain that? Now, go back to chapter 1. Look at verse 20. God exerted this power. He raised Christ from the dead. He seated Christ at the right hand, God's right hand in the heavenly realms, above all these rulers and authorities and powers and dominions, every name that is named or every name that's invoked. The risen Jesus is the real king, and not any of these powers and not any of the earthly powers that are being influenced or used as puppets in the hands of the real powers that be in the world. Jesus is the true power. And look at verse 22. God placed all things under Jesus' feet and appointed him to be the head over all things. So we might have this idea King Jesus, he is the king of my life. He's the king of the spiritual world or something. What is Jesus the king of, according to verse 22? Everything. Not just the spiritual dimension that we can't see, but everything. God made Jesus king over everything, appointed him to be the head over all things. For what specific people? The church. In other words, Jesus is the king of everything. He's exalted even above the powers. But does everybody recognize that fact? No. The church is this little fairy tale land where Jesus is actually king and where people recognize what is true, though not everybody has eyes to see it, i.e. that Jesus' death and resurrection made him the benevolent, loving king and leader of all of humanity. The church is this little fairy tale landscape that is called to live as if Jesus is truly the king. And we are called to, by the empowerment of the Spirit, to allow the Spirit to create in our midst and in our own personal lives a little fairy tale land where the powers no longer get to determine for you what is right and wrong, where you actually get to discover your humanity again for the first time in Jesus. What are the areas personally for you, and even just use the list, money, sex, power, where you actually, you profess allegiance to Jesus, but your life doesn't reflect that in any way. Your life reflects a life that's controlled by the powers and the value system that the powers of our culture have imposed on us. And what would it look like for you to even just start small, Start with one, money, sex, or power. What would it mean to just let one of those areas come under the influence of King Jesus? Because that's what God has called us to be. A little fairy tale landscape of grace where people can come and find refuge in good news. Good news. Come out from under the influence of the powers in our culture. And that has to happen to each of us first. I just would encourage you to take the time that remains to just, as we always do, make this a time of self-examination, but also examination of our collective life together and how we could together become a more faithful witness to the reign of King Jesus.
Well, there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, let me know about it in those comments down below. While you're going down there, you already know, if you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. Go right next door to tell us how much you like this video. And of course, make sure you hit that little share button and share this with any friends or family members that you think might benefit from or enjoy watching this here little video. Was that brief enough for you, Jack? Alrighty. Let me know what you think about this here more condensed, shorter, less me version of videos in those comments down below. Hope to see you here next time. And until next time, remember, Yeshua, Jesus loves you. So do I, including you, Jack. Now get off of here, go ride your bike, and read your Bible.